Welcome to Biz Dev Live. I am so excited to bring you Emily Oliver, Happy Emmy today. We're going to talk about happiness. We're going to talk about how to stay positive and move into happiness. One of the great things that I've learned over the past year, we're going through the pandemic, is happiness is a state of mind. It's not necessarily what your life is. It's not defined by your success. It's defined by how grateful you are, how healthy you are. I think we're going to get into a lot of that and more, but especially as we go through the trials and tribulations of a Christmas season, a new year, when so many people are dealing with so many challenges. This episode I know is going to be helpful for you and very, very likely a loved one. Stay tuned. I'll be right back with you right after the Biz Dev theme.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Emmy Oliver, aka Happy Emmy of Goals Garden, is a sustainable happiness coach and teacher. She took the risk of leaving her safe brand marketing and e-commerce profession. She's worked for some big names, so she's going to tell you about that, right? To pursue her calling of making happiness accessible to all. After overcoming much adversity at a very young age, she knew she needed to share her story and her tools with others. You're going to hear that story today. Now she focuses on equipping young professional women with a roadmap to silence their inner critic, overcome fear, and get out of their own way so they can create and feel deserving of a fulfilling and happy life. Emmy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
So much for having me, Cameron.
So I want people to know kind of what you're doing right now and just kind of the services you offer, and then we'll kind of work backward and talk about your life story and why you're doing it.
Sure. So typically I give happiness makeovers, and this is a program that you go into when, you've done a bunch of things to make you happy and you just haven't quite figured it out yet. So it's almost like grad school on yourself. Who am I? What makes me happy? How do I be more resilient and empowered? And this is a program that I learned how to teach under a company called Happiness for Humankind. I'm really excited about that. It's led hundreds of people, thousands of people to sustainable happiness. One-on-one coaching, and I also provide Reiki services.
So you're going to tell us later exactly how folks can come up and just kind of put on the makeup of happiness, because I'm sure that's exactly what a happiness makeover is, right? So, right. So tell us why you're getting, why you are passionate about this, why you're doing this. Tell us about your background and what's led to this moment. As I talked about in the bio, you've worked for some big names. Why aren't you in corporate America? Why aren't you doing those things? I'd love to hear the whole story.
Yeah. So it's so funny because a lot of people kind of know what they're really passionate about. They go through school and they really love English or math or people or, whatever it is. And until I got to college, I really did not have that one subject that I just was jazzed about until I discovered positive psychology. So I'll back up and I'll go to why I love it so much. However, I kind of had a quarter life crisis and realized, like, who am I and what's the one thing I love? And it had to do with positive psychology, and it had to do with helping people find their happiness from within. So, yeah, do you want me to kind of get started on what brought me to this journey?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Yeah. So,
So I know, because I mean, we talked about it as we're getting into this, but you've had some amazing challenges in your life. But I'd also like to know, like, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? Like, what was the aspiration? Like, what was the jumping pad into your life? Because I think that's changed, right? So I don't know that, what Emmy wanted to be at 13 and 18 is what she wants to be now, right?
mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because my company is Goals Garden, yet I had very little goals, until I graduated college, because you kind of go with the flow of, okay, now I'm in high school, now I'm in college, you're doing what society expects of you, yet I never had a chance to really pause and say, what do I want? So, I never had exactly a passion of, oh, I want to grow up and be X. So I really just enjoyed hanging out with friends. I was your normal average high schooler, so to speak. Yet the area I grew up in has a prevalence of addiction. So, from the housewives of New Jersey town, right?
Okay.
So
I was just going to ask, let's shout it out. Where did you come from? So you grew up in Jersey.
Yeah. So Wyckoff, Franklin Lakes area. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did that play into your story?
Mm-hmm. So my senior year of high school, boyfriend, first love of my life, was waiting outside of my classes for me every day. We did everything together. Ended up becoming an addict, and really good person, just had some anxiety, and we ended up losing him. And then I went to college, and my freshman year boyfriend, who didn't use at the time, I found out some years later, ended up dying of an overdose as well. So I was experiencing all of this really heavy loss, all of my best.
So at this point, you're 2 for 2 in you've now been in a relationship, and both of these guys have passed away.
Right. And there's actually a term for that. It's Black Widow syndrome. So I thought, oh man, everybody that I love is just going to pass away, right? So I had to break down that barrier of I'm kind of afraid to get close to anybody.
Well, now you're saying you had to break down an area, but I mean, I know a lot of times when people are going through stuff, like the first step is just realizing you had some kind of issue or challenge. So how did you even know?
Can you rephrase that question?
Well, you were saying that you sort of recognized that there was something that you were going through, that the fact that you had this Black Widow syndrome. So how did you even, like, I know I've gone through stuff, and then after the fact, I realized, like, oh, I was going through depression, right? So what was the sign that there was something that was wrong?
Yeah, I just had really unhealthy coping mechanisms. I just kind of wanted to keep to myself. I wanted to numb. What I call buffer, watch a lot of TV, overeat, and come to think of it now, it was depression. It was anxiety. It did come up from all of that. Oh, well, everybody who I open up to and care about ends up under the ground. So
which is a horrible place for a young person to be. I mean, that just sounds awful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I discovered positive psychology in college. And I discovered mindfulness, and I took every course this professor offered. I learned how to meditate. And I learned that through the science of happiness, you can do simple things in your day to create a positive mood, and you're actually going to build new neural pathways and become more grateful, become more kind, become more loving. And I just thought that was really interesting, because we all think we know what's best for us. We all think we know what we're doing. And until we actually give something different a try and are open-minded, we really have no idea.
So I got two questions. First of all, where'd you go to college?
The Richard Stockton College of New Jersey.
All right. And then who is the professor? Because you said you latched on and you took every class, right?
Yeah. His name is Professor Marcello Spinella.
All right. Shout out to him, right? Because he did some good work in your life, right? All right. And so what was like the first sign that this was like the right path for you? Like what sort of opened your eyes? I mean, I'm assuming you were getting some good feelings, but what was that thing that sort of set you off towards that educational path?
Yeah. So it was the first time I experienced eudaimonic happiness. So there's different types of happiness, and most people rely on hedonic.
Yeah, I just want to say I have no idea what that word means, so I'm glad you're breaking that down.
Yeah. So most people rely on hedonic happiness, and that's external things that make you happy. If I get the job, if I get the partner, if I get my dream vacation, my promotion, my salary raise, this is what I think is going to make me happy. And it's really interesting because during the pandemic, so much of the external things that we relied on for our happiness, going to concerts, going out to dinner, visiting family and friends, has been swept out from under us. So I realized that all of my happiness was something that could be taken away at any minute. And so when I started these positive psychology courses, and I learned mindfulness, I discovered eudaimonic happiness, which literally Aristotle introduced it. It means nature of a good spirit.
All right, so I heard almost the same work. So one is hedonic, which starts with H. Is that right?
Yeah, hedonic, Hedonic.
Okay, and then what's the other one?
Eudaimonic, Eudaimonic.
All right. I'm so happy you're spelling that out. All right. So now, all right. So what's the difference between the two?
Yeah. So eudaimonic is that peace and that inner contentment that you feel when you feel kind of connected to something larger. So, you know, when you experience bliss or joy for the first time, if you are on a hike in nature, while doing yoga, while doing meditation, maybe if you practice religion at church or synagogue, something like that. It's kind of that inner peace that you feel. You just, everything else was stripped away and you were just left with yourself. How would you feel?
That's like I think the happiness we imagine like the Buddha has, like folks that are spiritually centered and walking on palm leaves and that sort of thing, right? That's that kind of happiness that we imagine. Now, you're taking all these classes in college, but from the story that I heard from you, you didn't go right into being a happiness coach after college. First of all, it seems like you were excited about it, so why not? And then second of all, what were you aspiring to be at that point when you graduated college? What did you end up doing?
Yeah. So it was funny because I was the person who welcomed the incoming freshmen and said, declare psychology as your major. There's lots of jobs out there. You know, I was the one who was saying positive psychology is the best. Yet once I ended college, like so many people do, you kind of are a deer in the headlights. And I knew I didn't want to go back to school to get my master's in positive psychology because I've been in school my whole life. So I had this amazing opportunity to work for this consumer products equity organization. And I ended up working for them for 5 years and moving to Philly because it was a great job for someone new to the work industry to get. There was a lot of opportunity to grow, great healthcare benefits, you know, all the stuff that society tells you is going to be safe and is going to be the mature decision if you can make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, moving from Jersey to Philly. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but that was probably felt pretty good.
Well, yeah, I grew up in North Jersey. College I lived in Atlantic City, and then I moved to Philly.
Oh.
So. I didn't know.
My dad would always have a story about Atlantic City. He was like, Atlantic City is great, like within these 6 blocks, and then you get out of that, and then it's rough. And, I think it's hopefully one day going to be a lot better than that, but it seems like the challenges continue. All right, so go on. So you're in Philly, you're at this place. What was it? It was consumer products company. What was the name of it?
The Emerson Group.
All right, the Emerson Group. So you did that for 5 years, and how'd that work out?
I love the people I worked with. I loved my clients. I loved being wined and dined and staying at Ritz-Carlton's, for over a month every year. We would have our industry day.
I think you just got a whole bunch of people that are like, all right, Emmy, how do I get that job, right? Ritz-Carlton's for over a month.
And they're growing, and they're a great company to work for. The CEO really takes care of his employees. And so that's what made it even harder to leave, but I was not passionate about the work I was doing, selling products on Amazon, for Bausch & Lomb and L'Oreal. And I felt like, somebody really enjoyed it.
And so the wining and dining came from companies that were trying to make sure that they were in your offerings. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess the simplest way to explain it is almost like a brokerage. I would have 40 clients, which would be these companies. Usually we would grow them, and then Johnson & Johnson would end up taking over them. We would build small brands until they would get bigger. So, anybody's listening
awesome.
from them now, they're like, oh, you're butchering this, but
No, that's awesome. All right. So you did that. So you decided at some point, so you said, this isn't for me. Now, did you already have something else, or were you just like, I'm enough and like anything is better than this?
Yeah. So my closest friend who worked there, who I actually moved to that little area in Philly to be close to him, he was the most grounded, realistic person who worked there. He wasn't your normal corporate, short hair, like suit and tie. Sorry, no offense. No. And I
had somebody when I was younger, and this is like going back here. So this is a nice thing for folks that have been watching or just tuned into it and like, why does this guy wear a suit and tie? And it affected me so much. And this is like the insecurities of an insecure mind, right? The things that mess with it. So I was younger, and I like to dress up in suits. I've almost always had that kind of thing. A hip hop kid, I could also do the hip hop thing when I wanted to, but when dressing up in business and all that stuff, like this is the way I prefer to go. And I had a young woman, I was a younger guy at the time, young woman tell me, I think I was with the college and career mentoring stuff. And so I was older, but still like things get in your head. And she was like, oh, I would never be with the guy with a suit and tie. And I remember being so offended. Like it was just something that like hit my soul. I moved beyond that, but I remember that time, and I know people can take that. For now, like I know my style. I know what my thing is. I've been married for 16 years, so my security level is at a different place. But it's one of those things that within the cultural zeitgeist, it's really interesting, like what people sort of are you because now like the whole thing is like Facebook and Amazon, everybody's like tech gurus, like the millionaires and t-shirts and whatnot. So it's a whole different world, and you can be whatever you want to be. So my message is be comfortable in your own skin. I don't take offense. I'm comfortable in my own skin. Go ahead.
Well, and it's the corporate culture though, too. So it wasn't always people's own skin. They weren't always comfortable wearing a suit and tie every day. I wore a pencil skirt and heels and a blazer, and it almost was like, okay, is this a facade? Is this happiness a facade? Is this corporate culture a facade?
Well, and then there's the things on top of it where I think we've sort of put rules like silly rules in place in corporate culture in some places. Like just because somebody chooses to dress in a suit and tie doesn't mean that somebody that's dressing a different way that isn't amazingly awesome. I'm not saying stink. I'm not saying don't be well groomed, but I think that we've kind of put some weird things like let people be people and let's worry about the things that are more important. And so that plays out in everyday culture within organizations. You're dealing with silliness, people holding on to stuff, not letting go, micromanaging, all the things that are just self-destructive for an organization, and micromanaging what somebody wears in terms of color, skirt length, and everything. Obviously, rules. There's a good reason for some rules. We don't want too much distraction or craziness within the corporate environment, but some of this stuff is just nonsensical. Go ahead. I digress.
You digress. So I was talking about
So you were with this guy that long hair, kind of loose, comfortable.
Yeah, well, he was a good friend there, and he made me feel more at home and like myself in this corporate environment, because he also, had his day job and then his personal story. And then he ended up getting sick, and he ended up having to go into heart surgery, and he didn't make it. And I remember the day before he went in.
And just to bring everybody back, this is like number 3 for you. This is like third.
However, he was just a friend. He was a good friend.
Just a friend. Okay.
Yeah, and his girlfriend.
But I think that's a lot of death for somebody to experience in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I remember he was teaching me how to generate coupon codes, because he was the only one at our company who knew how to generate coupon codes. And I was, letting him do it because I think he was distracting himself. And, after he passed, it really stuck with me. Like, I need to feel, you spend so much time at work that if you don't enjoy it and you're not passionate and feeling fulfilled by what you're doing, you at least owe yourself the service of seeing if you can make it work, right? So, I thought, I stayed for a while longer because I needed to work up the courage to leave, and everybody thought I was crazy for leaving. However, I said I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't pursue my true calling and what really makes me happy. And I knew that would be becoming a happiness coach.
That's awesome. So you also, I know you said you had worked with Emerson, but was there some other brands that you worked in the mix? I thought there were some other things that you had done working with Emerson. You were working with Amazon, that sort of thing. Is that what I understood?
Yeah. I was the e-commerce specialist. So I had jet.com, amazon.com, basically the .coms. And we had a lot of clients under us. I did Calcium True, Bioactive. I was the brand manager for, so we had a bunch of different clients.
Okay. So now you decide I'm going to be a happiness coach. So what sort of just undertaking was involved with becoming a happiness coach?
Oh, you know what? I just remembered the answer to your question. The one brand that really hurt me that I worked for was Purdue Pharma. So Purdue, the maker of OxyContin, was one of our clients, and we only had their over-the-counter drugs, their, laxatives, stimulants, magnesium, that kind of stuff. However, I had this manager at the time who was really tough on me, and I decided to be vulnerable with him and tell him, hey, I am unable to go to Connecticut to go to Purdue Pharma and give them this Amazon presentation because, I've experienced a lot of loss of loved ones. I even have family members that are addicted to this, or, now we're in recovery, thank goodness. However, this is too close to home. I can't do this. So please accept this human asking for help. And, my person who I trained with me, who actually took over my job when I left, I said, she's more than capable of doing this. And he still had me go to Purdue and give this presentation. And I thought, wow, where's the humanity in that? And I need to do something that has more humanity than that, right?
Yes. So you get into the happiness coach thing, you leave Emerson behind. What was involved with you becoming a happiness coach? Now I know you got involved with this program. So how did you find the program, and how did that all work?
Yeah, so I literally just kind of put into the world that I wanted to be a happiness coach. And I told my friend about it, and she had done a happiness makeover of herself. And now she is, successful in the medical profession, her medical job, and she is sustainably happy. And I always noticed that she was just a glowing force. And she told me that she used to live with this happiness doctor in San Francisco who gave happiness makeovers. And I got connected with her, Dr. Amy Coget, and I ended up working with her and having her as my mentor for years. And now I'm able to teach some of her programs in addition to my own work with Goals Garden.
That's awesome. So now, in terms of how you are kind of leading people through their pain so that they can experience their happiness, how do you find your clients, and how do you work with them to make sure that they are getting to the garden of their goals?
Yeah. So mostly I find my clients through networking. You and I are part of the same networking group. So I just put myself out there. I go to a lot of networking groups. I do a lot of face-to-face talks with people and share with them what I know and what I can do. And oftentimes when people meet me, they see my energy. They see that I know what I'm talking about, and they are happy to refer me to people. So a lot of my clients are word of mouth as well. And a lot of my clients, tell their friends, like, you need to do this, right? See how you've told me how different I am, how much I've changed, how much happier I've become. This is why. And you need to do this for yourself. You need to engage in a coaching relationship to get out of your own way.
All right. And so what are some of the things that you do to make sure that you stay happy? Obviously, being a happiness coach, I imagine that people are curious. Well, are you happy? Or is this a case of the shoemaker with the poor shoes? Is this a situation where you actually, kind of live and practice what you preach?
Yeah. So I absolutely live and practice what I preach. And I think it took me a long time to get to where I was. I thought, 6 months and I'll be able to do this. It took almost 2 years because it was so rigorous in the fact that I needed to be sustainably happy. You can go to therapists and they can be depressed and they can still offer valuable insight. However, in order to give happiness makeovers, it was really important to my mentor that I truly, deeply was happy. And so I had to prove that to her. And the way that I do that is by engaging in positive psychology exercises every day, checking in with myself, realizing if I need to put on my oxygen mask before I assist other people, right? Yeah. So I do a lot of self-care. I know what I need to balance. I know when I need to spend a little extra time on myself, gratitude and appreciation, and, writing thank you notes to friends, like things like that I know really fill me up. And the Reiki helps with that too.
All right. So talk to us about, this process. I'm sorry. Talk to us about the process for, you're getting a client. Who's a great candidate for working with you? Who are the people that you're looking for outside of networking? Obviously, you're going to connect with people with the networking you're doing, but who are people that you're sort of looking to connect with? Who are people that, you feel like really could use your services to help them get past trauma? I know I was talking to you before we got on. I'm, working with somebody by accident, sort of fell into it, but somebody's trying to work through their story. And I think that's big. They've never really looked at their story in a way where they have built it. And I think that's really a big thing for networking, is really being clear with who you are and being able to tell your story so that people can actually connect with you. And then for yourself on the personal happiness side, really understand your full self. A lot of people are telling people that, show up and be your full self. But I don't know that everybody really truly knows who their full self is or are letting themselves be their full self. So who should be working with you, and how do you get people to that place?
Yeah. So there are 48 barriers to authenticity, right? So I like to work with people who have that facade of happiness, and then I help them actually embody it. So a lot of times it's women who lack the confidence to advocate for themselves. So we all have this inner critic. We all have this little voice in our head that tells us, you should have done this. You could have been better. Like, why did you say that? And it's really important to get to know that inner critic and realize, wow, like I wouldn't let somebody else talk to me like that. Why am I talking to me like that? And that is one of the hugest things you can do for yourself, is you don't have to necessarily love that inner voice that talks in your head, but you have to kind of treat them like you would a friend. Like, hey, how you doing? You okay? Like, let's see if we can work together to live our life to the fullest. And then to answer your question before about, I love working with people who kind of have that victim mentality because there's so much opportunity there. We always hear about post-traumatic stress, yet we really are without learning too much about post-traumatic growth. And the strongest people you and I know are probably those who have overcome the hardest or biggest adversity, right? You don't become strong by having nothing big ever happen to you. So being able to change that story and make it your own, the beauty of your past is you can take what you want from it and leave the rest. So I normally don't tell the story of the loss that I had in my past because there are so many wonderful things about my past as well. And, I could tell you all the terrible things, or I could tell you all the wonderful things. And thinking about my past as being wonderful and thinking about my past as making me stronger and smarter, and who do I want to be now because of that, is what really gives me the motivation to share this with other people and help them understand their past in a way that's going to just make them rise up.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the really interesting things as you're meeting people and you are just within the first couple of words, right? How people introduce themselves, something as simple as somebody, you're meeting somebody, step into the circle and somebody says, "I'm sorry," right? Instead of "nice to meet you," or, like that immediate thing, you get a sort of a sense of personality, optimists, pessimists. What really landed with me is somebody that has that victim mentality. There's so many people that feel like life is happening to them rather than them living life on purpose, and that they are making change in the world, if that makes sense. So getting people to that place is a really important thing and really incredible work. I want you to, I know I have your LinkedIn address down below in the YouTube comments. If you're on Facebook, it's off to the side. Who are, again, people, because I was thinking too, I was wondering in my head, if you're in that sense of feeling like you're not worthy or that the world's happening to you, you probably need something like this. You probably need Happy Emmy to come into your life, but sometimes you're probably the last person to reach out and ask for that help because you feel like you're not worthy or that you can't afford it or you can't, it's too difficult. It's too challenging. How do you sort of get people from a place of, because I think, being in master networks, or both the master networks, but, going out, trying to better yourself, you're looking, for, whether it's seeing a presenter, speaker, inspirational talk from Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, all these different leaders in the space, listening to so many of the empowered females that are out in the world, whether it be Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton, understanding that, you have worth, that whether you're female, male, that when you show up and you bring your whole self, you're making the world a better place. That's all well and good. We want to keep people in our circle, mentors that are doing things that are above us and beyond us. I know that's been a tough thing for me to sort of get my head around. And now I've finally given myself permission to go out and ask, but it's taken a long time for me to do that, to feel comfortable saying, hey, would you be my accountability partner? Or, hey, let's meet every once in a while and check in on each other's goals. Or I am going to go and hire this person to help me with my brand or my business, or even with my personal self, and go hire a personal trainer. So knowing that some of the folks that probably need you the most are probably the most reluctant to ask, how do you get people over that divide?
I offer free consultations. So usually when I stumble across somebody who's a good candidate, I just offer, hey, no strings attached. Can we talk about happiness, right? And I'll ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the happiest you could imagine, where are you on the happiness scale? And I ask them, what % of the time are you living in the moment, right? So you're not thinking about the past, which is often a big indicator of depression. A lot of people who are depressed have regret and think about the past a lot. How often, are you present, not thinking about the future? Thinking about the future, worrying about the future holds a lot of anxiety. And then they realize, okay, maybe I'm in the present moment 20, 30% of the time. And then I also ask, what is your positive to negative thought ratio? So if you had to put a ratio on how many thoughts you have a day that are positive versus negative, is it 50-50? Is it mostly negative? And by the end of that, it's kind of a wake-up call. It's kind of like, okay, nobody's going to do this for me, especially if you advocate for your physical health. Why wouldn't you advocate for your mental health? And I am so passionate about this, and I am very down to earth and transparent. So I don't necessarily sell in a way that feels salesy. I left the marketing and sales world because that wasn't my thing. My thing was human connection. And I'm so passionate about helping people overcome that fear, overcome that seeming comfort zone, to be the best that they could be. Because when you overeat, when you watch TV, all these things that you think are comfortable are actually causing you more pain in the long run. And to speak with me for 1 or 2 hours a week makes you feel good in itself. Paying money for yourself is very hard for somebody that I like to work with, right? Because they almost feel like they're not worthy of spending that much money on themselves. But the second they do, they feel so much better because they actually advocated for themselves. They actually made a step in the right direction to become the best version of themselves. And that's what the world needs.
I love that. And I'm really appreciative of the idea of, if you're doing anything, this show is about business development. The idea that you can't be your best self in business if you are not a fully healthy person. So that means whether it's a dentist appointment, like, to your point, a dentist appointment, a health checkup, making sure that you're mentally healthy is got to be the most important thing. It can't start anywhere else, because that is the basis for everything else.
Absolutely. And so often we forget about that. So often we forget to put our oxygen mask on first. However, a lot of times we'll be, okay, well, I don't want to seem too full of myself. I don't want to seem narcissistic. However, narcissists, love themselves at the expense of others, but people who take care of themselves do it for others. They know that if I take care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually, then I will be able to show up 100% for the people in my life that I care about, for my work, for whatever it is that you create in this life that only exists in the present moment.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I'm thinking about something that's really important about what you said is this idea, because sometimes people feel like, who am I? I don't want to get too big of a head. I don't want to make people feel like I know more. And I find myself trying to tote the line between egomaniac and somebody that actually feels like they can help and bring value. Because, especially I'm doing a YouTube show, we're doing this today, it's headline, and, I'm doing this event and that event. And then right now I'm in line to be the president of the Mount Pleasant Master Networks chapter. And so you're just like, well, position and all this stuff. And I definitely have that inner battle, like, who am I? I'm not a millionaire. I'm not doing all this stuff, right? So there's that imposter syndrome kind of feeling. And I balance it out with the idea that I do have experience. I have provided leadership. So I sort of look back at my own accolades. I'm grateful for what I've been able to achieve, and I'm able to find value there so that I can then lead in a place where I honestly want to put other people out there. Like, I want to train other people, and if they're willing to step up and lead. I just had a conversation actually today before we jumped on. I'd been hosting a program for an association, and I told this other person that worked with the association, I think part of the challenge is that I'm involved and I'm a block. I don't really care that I'm like the point person. You be the point person. Here's all the information and data. I think people are thinking that I'm holding on to it for some purpose, which isn't the case. I just want this association to be a place where people can connect and enjoy and grow and expand. So having that humility and being able to trade off, I think looking at yourself honestly and saying, what are you in it for? And then if you understand what you're in it for, and I think it's a lot better when you have truly, what's the word? You were talking about salesy. I'm not just there to get something. I'm there to provide something. I'm there to serve.
Yeah. And everybody has that imposter syndrome, and nobody wants to seem like an egomaniac. Yet, if you are nervous about that, there's like a 99% chance that you're not one of those people, right? And I think something that's really helpful is to think, I'm worthy by design, not decision. I exist as a human on this earth right now, so there must be a reason that I'm here. So it's not my decision as to whether or not I'm worthy of this or this or this. It just, there's a bigger reason for all of it. It's by design, not decision.
Speaking to that, I think that is so huge and worth the price of admission today. I think we may have just helped a lot of people get over maybe a block that they were experiencing. I've been talking about every company needs to be a media company. So I think this conversation is so valuable. Get yourself mentally healthy. You need some help. Happy Emmy is here to take care of you, and put your stuff out there, put your message out there, because you cannot change the world hiding behind the rock, not actually influence and changing anything. You actually have to get in there and get your hands dirty and be out there in the mix. So to that point, how can folks get involved with you, Emily? Let them know where to go. I know the LinkedIn address is down below, but please share the website and anything else that they can do to get involved with you, and then say goodbye. And we'll play the Biz Dev theme off.
Yeah. So thank you. You can reach out to me on my Flow page, flow.page/Goals Garden. You can set up a call with me and we can have a face-to-face, a consultation, always free. And that's the best way to get in contact with me, or shoot me an email at emily@goalsgarden.com, or follow me on social. So thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Cameron.
No, thank you for being on. Say goodbye, Emmy.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.